Evening, everyone. Welcome along to the Rangers Rabble Monday Night Phone-In. I'm Brian, the host tonight, and I'm joined by Ian. How are we?
I'm very good, Brian. Haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah.
I know you're away on your holidays. You have a good time?
Yes, a better time than I probably should have, but yeah, I was
Good
glad to
stuff.
get home. Glad to get home. Alex, first time you've been on with me. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I am good. Thanks for having me on again this second night in a row. So ready to go again.
Magic. So yes, Rangers never leaves you with much to not discuss, Ian. And yeah, in the latest sort of news that's broken the last half hour, Chris Jack has released I was going to say a tweet, but it's not a tweet now. It's something on X that it looks like Dave King's return is possibly being blocked by the investors that are already there. So this now is very problematic going forward. Well, for Dave King, certainly it's problematic, Ian, but more importantly, I think everybody was in the camp of King returning and sort of bringing a couple of years stability like he was offering, and now that looks like it's dead in the water.
It would appear that way, Brian, but these things can change as quickly as they change. You know what I mean? It can all change again. You know, it could be a different narrative tomorrow. But I was quite, it was interesting. You know, Dave King obviously made a play there today in order to reintroduce himself to the board that he decided to kind of walk away from a while back. You know, for his own reasons. And it's no secret that him and Douglas Park aren't particularly close. He mentioned that again today, but it was interesting because he mentioned that he stayed in constant contact with John Bennett. So from what I was reading in between the lines, it maybe appeared that he had a friend in Bennett, which that maybe could have helped him attain his position as chairman. Who knows? You know what I mean? Or certainly be enough to influence him back onto the board. Is because he is the individual biggest shareholder, not majority shareholder. We don't have one. He's just individually the biggest shareholder at the club, and he was quite scathing. He was quite scathing in his attack. I thought today, Brian. You know, he was talking about all the policies and all the kind of good business practices that he'd put in place prior to him leaving. And he was under the impression, without actually knowing, he highlighted, which was quite interesting as well, which we'll get to, that these practices are no longer there. And he also mentioned that he wasn't surprised about John Bennett's health issues because he was literally one man alone, shoulder to the pump, getting on with the work, whilst other board members were very remote, was his exact words. So there's a lot, without me going into more and more of it, there was an awful lot to take away from that interview today. And just before we go live, as you say, it seems to have taken another twist. So yeah, I mean, it kind of is what it is. But I think reading between the lines, King was obviously a wee bit put out when the American consortium led by that Kyle Fox came in, and they were quickly dismissed by Douglas Park. And the board members, and I think King's end game here is to sell his concern of his 14% on that group that he's in, Asset Limited, Oasis Asset Limited, what they're called, and but so to that end, I think that obviously get his nose out of joint. That there was investors there that, for whatever reason, the existing board thought not to entertain them. Now we'll never know if that was the right or wrong thing to do per se. Douglas Park isn't one that often comes out, Brian, and kind of responds back. So to that end, we don't know. But as much as it seems to be dead in the water at the moment, I wouldn't be surprised if it changes again. But we'll see.
Absolutely, Alex. This just really doesn't help things. We had an encouraging win against Dundee United at the weekend. Obviously the news broke over the weekend and today. Sorry, that there's a possibility that Dave King was returning. There was a bit of a lot. There was the positivity coming, and then all of a sudden, with as said in the last half hour, there's been a news release that obviously the Dave King story is possibly looking like it's dead in the water now. For me, this just adds to the anxiety and the sort of the frustration of the fans, and it'll just build, won't it?
Seems like whenever the fans get a bit of good news and a bit of hope, with the team obviously winning yesterday and finally getting a good result on the board, and then Dave King obviously coming out and saying that he wants to return, the board seem to go, well, you've had your bit of good news and a bit of fun, now let's just rip it away and make the decision that, we don't want this to happen. I wonder if it's because, as Ian pointed out, that, Dave King's obviously said he wants to sell his shares. Do they not want somebody else coming in with different ideas to what the board have got? And that's maybe why they've made this U-turn and said, actually, no, as a board, we don't want Dave King in. Maybe they didn't like what he was saying in his interview on TalkSport, and they've kind of disagreed with that points, and they've had a bit of an emergency meeting and just said, we're actually going to take a stand here and say that we don't want Dave King coming back into the club, although he is the largest shareholder. We actually don't want him being part of the board and making these decisions, because when you look at it, I think it was mentioned earlier in the group chat, and the amount of high positions Rangers are out there now, and Dave King was looking like he was going to be the man to sort this. Now it's been told no. Was he going to be the knight in shining armour, and we've said he was going to make some changes, and all of a sudden the club's gone, well, we've got our own ideas and this is the way we're going to go forward?
Absolutely. And I believe Martin is going to play us a slight clip of a wee clip of the Dave King interview on TalkSport. So here is the clip for you.
It wasn't my intention, but it would be my intention now to actually come back. So it's not really a call to action in that sense. It's not a wake-up call. I think it does need someone to come in quickly. It needs someone with institutional experience, not an outsider. I don't think is going to spend months or whatever trying to get his arms around the problem. It needs someone to come in quickly. And I think there's two major objectives. The one is to reintroduce the operational policies, controls, procedures, processes that have gone missing over the last couple of years, and get the club up to speed there. And secondly, to find a new investor. So I would imagine if I come in, say, for a 2-year period, is the kind of time I was thinking of, where I can first of all get the club up and running properly and have a proper plan going forward as to how we're going to bridge the gap. Now, I've got no idea what I'll find when I go in there, but hopefully it's not as bad as it was when I went in 9 years ago. I've had discussions with other parties around it who I would need support of. It's not something I can do on my own, and certainly there is a mood by interested parties with vested interest, both within and outside the board, who understand that there is a level of urgency. I think this season is slipping. Certainly on the pitch, this season is slipping. And I'm now talking as a supporter. I think it's going to be a very, very challenging season. I think by the end of October, with European games coming up, I think the club could be in a very difficult place. And there's no indication, there's no leadership. I mean, if I look at some of the interviews, I had to give a lot of frank interviews. Sometimes people didn't like them, but they were always honest. And the situation was what it was. But I get a sense that people are just dealing with platitudes now. I think the supporters, if they're going to continue to support the club as opposed to become apathetic, need to know that the people out there are going to lead the club, must be visible, must be transparent, and must provide a way forward. I've got the utmost respect for Graham, and he knows a lot more about football than I do. But I think there's a very significant gap on the pitch and off the pitch at the moment between ourselves and Celtic.
Yeah, Ian, as you said before, not exactly complimentary to the current board. I think it really brings into sharp focus the job that John Bennett was doing there. It seems as though, from what Dave King said there in his TalkSport interview, that it was almost the John Bennett band. He was on his own, sort of doing things. I think any criticism I made that at the board, it's always been the board. It's never been any individual on the board, because effectively the board are a group of people on the board that represent the fans. And my criticism was aimed at everybody on it, not just an individual. But exactly. I think this really brings into sharp focus the sort of position that John Bennett was under, and he wasn't getting much backing.
It obviously does, and just as I said earlier, he obviously had some sort of communication ongoing with Dave King, because Dave seemed to be able to quote that he's been in constant contact and have had these conversations with him. But having said that, Dave King intentionally lit a fire under the fans today, I think. You know what I mean? Now, rightly or wrongly. Now, the parks and the existing board may well be failing, yeah, but certainly it would appear after tonight that the investors have all got round Park and sided with them for the moment. It would appear that way. But if you're Dave King, and you want to get onto a board, it's the best way to do it to jump on TalkSport and speak to Jim White about it and tell him he's making himself available. Of course it isn't. You go to the board members and say that. Now, we know he's been in touch with John Bennett. So obviously John Bennett is maybe the sum total of his allies on that board. Yeah. Listen, we're making lots of guesses here, but John Bennett obviously is, spoken to, as he should, as a individually the highest, the largest shareholder at the club.
Mm-hmm.
But to that end, is the communication so poor between our largest individual shareholder and the existing board that they can't speak to each other?
Yeah.
If that's the case, how does that get resolved? So if it was a case that King was to come in and Douglas Park was to step back or eventually sell his shares, as Dave King has set out right from the start and said, look, my intention is to sell my shares here, and I think his nose get put out of joint when Kyle Fox and the American investors came by and were quickly dismissed by Douglas Park. Now, that might have been for all the right reasons. We don't know. And Dave King's nose might be out of joint that he's just not been able to sell his shares in the club. So, yeah, in all honesty, it's the whole thing. I mean, as much as Dave King may well come back in and may well be able to, what he says, put these policies in place that include better recruitment, that include, not letting managers, as he said, just do their own thing and spend the money that they want and control the players' contracts, which has been a huge issue in the last 6 months. These players' contracts been out of control and poorly written. Look at the Hadji situation, for just to take one, and then look at the players that have left, that have essentially left on money that is laughable. Let's be honest, So all of that is very much a failing of our current setup. So Dave King's not wrong there, But what he's saying is it would have been different on his shift, essentially, and he wants back into not only to fix it, but to protect his investment. So let's not forget, he's got a lot of money here that he needs to protect. So, does his ambitions align with the fans wanting a better team? Probably they do. But I don't think for a second Douglas Park doesn't want Rangers to do well either, So I think it's a real sad state of affairs, as I saw. I think it was Robert Robertson or someone in the comments there mentioned you've literally got your highest individual shareholder that has to go on TalkSport to try and moderate a position onto the board. Yeah. That's not good.
No. Just before I come to you, Alex, on that clip, it is your Monday night phone in. The phone lines now are open. You can get through to Martin. 0141 628 7237, 0141 628 7237. You can speak about anything. You can speak about the King situation, the Dundee United game, anything you want. It's up to you, but you will get through to Martin and he will put you through. So, Alex, yeah, it was a hard listen. It's really a damning sort of insight into what's actually happening at board level, isn't it?
No, definitely. It's a sad state of affairs when you have to go into TalkSport to make a point. I think the bit that got me was when Dave King almost alluded to the fact he doesn't know what's going on in the boardroom. He doesn't know the situation if it's worse than when he first came in. As Ian's pointed out, that's our largest shareholder and he doesn't know what's going on in the boardroom. I think that's quite a scary fact to come across. And he's talking about that we need to bridge a gap. The gap's been there for a number of years now. Since we won 55, the gap's been there and we've not actually found a way to get it. So why is it taking to now to actually have this conversation and say, do we need to get control? And then obviously, as I pointed out before, the board have not obviously liked what's been said by Dave King, because they've come out and said that he's not coming into the club just now. I wonder what is obviously going on. Is there more that's been said? And Dave King's obviously tried to keep it a bit PG for TalkSport and not allude to a lot, as he actually said a lot more, because it was quite a quick turnaround for the club to come out and say that they don't want him to be back in that boardroom. I just wonder what's going to be next for Rangers and how we can move forward, because there's a lot of things that need fixed and a lot of things that the fans can see it. You know, we can see that stuff needs fixed, and if we can see that as fans who are not in that boardroom, why can the board not see it, and why are they not getting anything in to actually help fix this change and move us forward? It's never going to be a short-term fix, and that's the issue that we've got at Rangers. We need this. We need it to be long-term, and the issue is that in a club like Rangers, you can't wait for the long-term to kick in.
No. I mean, Ian, the problem I see is it almost looks as though this board are hanging on now for just the sake of it. They're not there. I'm not saying they're there for the benefit of Rangers because they say they are, but from the outside looking in, it doesn't appear as though things are going to get better with this current board as it currently stands. I mean, we've got no director of football, we've got no CEO, we've no chairman now. All the big positions in a football club we don't have filled, and that has been for some time, and that's the problem now, isn't it?
Look, there's no doubt. When Dave King mentioned today that they've been operationally naive and operationally not been able to appoint a CEO, for such a long period of time, that's a failing of the current board. We know that. We absolutely know that's a failing of the current board. But to be fair, it's as much as you're right to say, that the board is in a really, really bad way, but these guys have all invested into the club, and the return on their investment will be minimal. There'll be a return, but it'll be minimal. But the truth is, Brian, outside of Dave King and this American consortium that was quickly shot down, and albeit didn't even get time to get vetted and go through all the proper practices as you would if you're entertaining it. But I just think that these guys they're very much holding the doors open, by their fingernails here, and there's no one coming up behind them. So as much as don't forget, as much as we don't like a particular board, they've not covered themselves in glory with a lack of recruitment, with the transfer window, with extending the manager's contract, with all of the things that's made us wonder. You know what I mean? But these guys aren't impressed. These guys are Rangers fans that believe they're doing the right thing. And no board isn't for sale. If you know what I mean, if there was someone else out there with a serious investment, then we're duty bound to look at these guys. But there's just not. If Dave King is probably a better option in terms of shop windowing type thing for some potential investment. As he said, I think the two things he wanted to do was introduce the leadership and then source new investors, is what he said today. Reintroduce all his best practices and then source new investors. But I don't see a road out of this at the moment, other than a bit more squabbling between King and Park. And I can only hope eventually something gives.
One of the scary comments that we heard from Dave King, though, was that I don't know much about football, but I know what needs to be fixed. And this man says he doesn't know much about football, but knows what needs to be fixed, and yet our board still can't fix these issues. And these are the guys that are in charge of the day-to-day.
Yeah, there was a few scary things that Dave King said, Alex. You're absolutely right. And on one hand he was criticising him, and then in the next hand saying he's no idea what's going on in there. So that doesn't really make sense as such. But we can only take him at his word when he mentioned about the fact he was speaking to John Bennett, and John Bennett has really felt home alone in at Ibrox, and that much we can assume to be true. So what are the other board members doing? That we need a bit of that. I mean, now, okay, it sits at Bennett's door as to why he hasn't appointed a CEO. Of course it does, director of football, but it'll be interesting to see what John Bennett comes out and says eventually when if he has a sabbatical, comes back, or whatever he does. You know what I mean? But at the moment, what's important for John Bennett is getting his health back.
100%. Poor Martin's lonely back there in the producer room. Give him a phone. He's dying to talk to somebody, so give him a phone. 01416287237. It's got to be somebody out there that's got an opinion on this matter with Dave King. But as you said, Alex, it wasn't just one thing he said. There were several things. And I don't think anybody's going to disagree when you say that wasn't the best idea that King had. But he maybe had no other option. He maybe that was his only avenue, because I think it's very public that they don't really get on. But as Ian said earlier, that's a sad indictment that board members can't even be sort of civil and speak to each other and hash things out.
No, it's a poor indication of where the board is when you're having to go on TalkSport. But I think, it might be that he's gone on TalkSport because it gets it out more in the public eye. Although I don't know how much more you can get out there, what's going on at this club, because it's all out there already. Yeah. But it is bad that you're having to go on TalkSport. But I mean, what's wrong with just picking up a phone? If you can do that to TalkSport and have a call, why can't you phone the board, even just a member, and have a chat and see what's going on? Or I know it's not the easiest trip, but come back from Johannesburg and come over to Scotland and then almost force his way back into the boardroom and have that chat. I think one of the comments was, are we on our way for a hostile takeover? I don't think we're at that stage yet, but it's about having that opportunity to have a chat. Biggest shareholder, and he can't actually just have a simple chat with any of the board.
All it stands, and if this has been quickly quashed and shut down, Brian, as Chris Jack's tweet suggested at the top of the programme, you mentioned that, then all it's done is further aggravate the fans, which I'm not okay with Dave King doing that. I'm not okay with that. That's not how you go about things, and I think he knows that. But maybe the frustration is as such that he's got too many immovable objects in the boardroom that he wants to be part of, and we'll never really know what the best working dynamic is in there. But certainly, if we're to believe John Bennett's been left alone in there, and that's why we don't have a CEO and that's why we don't have a director of football, then that's not good. That means that the current board and the working practices that King alluded to in his statement genuinely aren't there. So then if you're put yourself in Dave King's position, you're thinking, well, Christ almighty, I've got a lot of money tied up in this club. Now that money and the value of that money is only going to go south if the status quo gets to exist. So, but there's ways and means to do it. So you're probably Douglas Park and Dave King are as culpable as each other, I would say.
Very much so. And welcome along, new member, Donald Mackay. Nice to have you along in the members slot. Plenty of shows for your carousel. There's the morning shows just now at 11:30 every morning. There's the member shows on a Thursday. Live reactions pre-match and live reactions for most games at the weekends when Rangers play. So nice to have you along. Right, so we spoke about, I think, Dave King. Oh, missed this one. The Catalyst £2 super chat. This club is in such shambles, needing sorting now. Pretty much can't disagree with that, Alec. They're, what's the word I'm looking for? They're almost sort of not jumping, but they're just sort of running into one problem to the next, aren't they? They don't seem to be able to, navigate their way out of a minefield.
No, and I think this it's been a minefield for a while. When you talk about the stadium situation, the background staff, the results on the park, contract situations, players coming in or going for pennies, and then players not getting played because of contracts. It's such a shambles. Where does it end? I just wanted to ask you both a question. Do you think that Dave King went on TalkSport to try and get the backing of the fans?
Well, that's what he just said. Yeah, it's literally to put further pressure. So if he doesn't have any allies on the board, which he clearly doesn't, because they've all just sided with Douglas Park. So they've literally the next best thing is the pressure, fans from the pressure. Alex, so pressure from the fans. Sorry, and that comes at a time when the board, especially John Bennett, has been under intense pressure from the fans, as has the players, especially the captain. So You know, it was a calculated move that doesn't seem to have paid off for him at the moment. And even if it did, it was only going to get a wee bit worse before it potentially got better if it did. You know, so there's nothing to say that Dave King coming in will, or if Dave King hadn't have left, we might have still been this. There might have still been this chasm behind Celtic. We don't know. There's no evidence to suggest otherwise. But what we do know now is we seem to have a board that's either disconnected or failing us somewhat. And at that point, if you follow that train of thought, then Dave King seems like a good option.
I think he's sounded out the board previous and realised that he wasn't getting anywhere, and he just decided, well, I'm just going to go on radio and say something because I'm not getting anywhere. Right.
And I think that's been prompted by the American investors getting told to go away.
Yeah, I genuinely think he's went to the board himself and tried to speak to them, and he's got nowhere. And he's kind of thought, well, I've got no other option. I'm going to go on a radio station and just speak about it because I've got nowhere to go. Basically, he's the biggest single shareholder, Alec, and he's basically left. He's been left with no other option. He's tried to speak to them. They've poo-pooed him, and he's decided, well, I've got no other option. I've got to say how things are.
No,
do you agree, Alex?
No, I definitely do agree. You wonder what's the next step now. You know, with the board coming out and not being open to the option at all. What's Dave King's next move? Where do we go from here? Where does he go? How does he not only win? Well, I think he's trying to win the fans. I agree with you both on that point. But how does he now get the board back on side? How does he get into this boardroom? How does he start impeding his authority on the club? Do you know, how does he manage that? And I don't know. Personally, I don't know an answer, and I don't see how he's going to manage that.
Yeah, I mean, Ian, it's interesting as well. John Gilligan's went in as the interim sort of chairman. I mean, is he not part of the Three Bears consortium that Dave King was part of? You know, so he has got a ally on the board, maybe only temporarily, but he has got one there. But one's not enough, is it?
No,
it wouldn't appear to be. It wouldn't appear to be. I mean, because listen, we've got to remember, it was Dave King chose to remove himself from that situation with us two and a bit years ago. You know, he chose to remove himself from that situation. And for what I didn't think for a second I'd be on here defending Douglas Park. I really didn't. But it's for all the misgivings that we assume of the current board in Douglas Park, he stayed around and went through all the court cases. You know what I mean? We did all the hard yards getting us to where we are. So Douglas Park very much deserves some kudos. You know, he absolutely does. Is he fit for purpose now? Who knows? Who knows? It would appear maybe not. You know, but is Dave King the answer? Who knows? But is it the only option? Definitely at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's somebody saying in the comments, I'm just trying to find it, Alec, you know, that King's actually been, well, more than transparent than the board has been for quite a while. You know, he's told us what he knows. It's not an awful lot, but you know, he's obviously, as I said before, I think he's now at the point where he's got no other options. But I think this has been the whole problem for many, many years now, is the fact that there's not much transparency. Although when Bisgrove was chief executive, he started these, was it 3 monthly meetings with fans groups, and they were updating it that way. But there just doesn't seem to be anything there, does there?
Doesn't seem to be a lot of communication, to be fair. I don't see where we go from here, how we get this communication, because I don't know where it's coming from Rangers. I know, as you're saying, Bisgrove came out, but it's like, who's next? Who's next to come out and give a statement? Who's next to even just give the fans a bit of, where do we go next? Who's to give us that bit of motivation, that talk that this is what we can do as a board and this is where we're going to go?
Absolutely. Stephen Gillespie, £5 super chat, much appreciated. Thank you very much. For me, King's got the buyer all lined up, offering himself for 2 years, just enough time to polish the turd of our club has become off the park. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I was just saying. He was offering himself for 2 years, then he was going to hand over to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how true that is, because if King thinks he's found himself a buyer, he's duty bound to present it to the board. You know what I mean? So it's not like he's buying it from King, you know. So so that you can present a buyer at any time, You know, and you should, you know, because let's be honest, if someone came in with crazy dough, it would you know, assume be for sale. You know, you can only assume that Douglas Park sought off this American consortium because the nature of the deal didn't suit the club. You know, because again, we don't know much about Douglas Park. It doesn't come out much, but we know he loves the club. You know, we know he loves the club, and he's certainly been there. But just on the super chats and just Stephen Gillespie there, it's worth mentioning the chap Donald Mackay. He just joined up on a sponsorship tier, Brian, which is fantastic. We don't have many of them. That's incredible. Nice one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't showing, but Peter is now a membership now as well. So that's fantastic, Peter. Thank you for joining us on the Rangers Rabble. Now there's questions here. I'm just going to try and rattle through as many of them as we can. There's lots coming in. Locheye the view, Alec. If the board has the club's best interest at heart, then regardless of who it is, the best man for the job is the best man for the job.
It's hard to disagree with that, to be fair, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day,
but remember, there'll be interpretations of who thinks people are best man for the job. You know,
Dave King probably has her man, and then the board have their man. You know,
we've been scolded by that before, haven't we? Once or twice before, where we thought they were good and it hasn't turned out so well. So it's a difficult one, very much difficult one. Aaron Dighton, sorry. So is there going to be a power struggle in the board, Alec?
I think there already is one. I think with this interview with Dave King, I think it's already begun. I think it's begun long before this, to be fair. And I think now Dave King's had to go to TalkSport to get it in the limelight that there's actually a major struggle on the go in this Rangers boardroom. Sorry, and I think it has begun, and we're in the start of this now. And it's, where does it go? I think I said that before. Where do we go? Where does this go from here on?
Absolutely. I mean, Ian, it really is now, isn't it? This power struggle. It's started now. Obviously, I think King tried to do it on the QT, wasn't getting anywhere, and he's thought, well, I've got no more aces to play. I'll throw this one out there.
Exactly. I mean, we are where we are because it's, there were some of all the parts that brought us here. So because we had, I think I sent a list of all the shareholders into a group chat today. These were the list of people that collectively managed to rescue the club back from the Charles King, Mike Ashley debacle that was, you know what I mean? So there was no one big sugar daddy who would be majority shareholder as such that can, dictate how things go. We've got part ownership from 1872 in the club. We've got 14% that King, the consortium that King heads up. We've got Dundee Park at 12% and various others. Even John Bennett has 5% of the shares of the club. So, I mean, is there a power struggle? Yeah, there's almost, we're almost at a case where, this democracy of lots of shareholders but none are majority, are too many chiefs, type thing, So it's kind of just where we've ended up. And at the moment, as much as there's upheaval in the boardroom, it's a stalemate, is what it is, and that's worrying when it's a stalemate. I mean, if there was anything, if Dave King was to do anything, I do believe he would make us more commercially viable for external investment. I do believe that. I do believe with him and his contacts in America and Johannesburg, South Africa, where he lives, he could possibly attract investors maybe better than Douglas Park, is my assumption. Yeah, but who knows?
Absolutely. And one final point, Alec, from James Cameron. Dave King is 100% right in what he said about how the club is being run. It's us mugs backing this board, season ticket, merchandise. Nothing will change. I mean, this is the point now where we're into, certainly as a fan base, we're into sort of dangerous territory of our move. I don't know. I don't really, apart from withholding ticket sales and sort of merchandise sales, there's not much more we can do, is there?
Not really. What do we do? Do we just not go into the stadium? Do we stand outside the stadium and actually just not go to games at this point? And is that the point we're getting to? We're going to be walking with banners saying "sack the board" because is that what the club want? us to be coming to actually listen to what the fans are saying, because as James says there, we as the fans are being treated like mugs, and we're not actually getting much. And I think the most transparency we've actually had is Dave King in this interview today. We actually don't seem to get much from the board in itself. We get drips and drabs, but Dave King's actually come out and said what it is.
The phone lines are unfortunately closed, folks. I think Martin's internet's playing up. That hamster's not going around that wheel quick enough, so the phone lines are unfortunately closed. So
just to talk on James's point there as well, Brian, and to add what Alex said, I'm old enough to remember the early 80s when we did have 22,000 at Ibrox. So there is a point where the fans will get fed up, I've seen that happen before. I know we've got 10, 15,000 people on a waiting list for season tickets. You'd be amazed how quickly that will diminish should the leadership of the club seem so far behind Celtic that it might be unattainable to ever get where they are. I don't believe we're at that stage. I genuinely don't, but I certainly think we're making a right fist of this in order to try and get where we need to be. We don't seem to be closing the gap on the basics, like making strategic appointments and managing our transfer windows and our players' contracts. I mean, that's fairly basic. These things that have been tantamount to mismanagement and to be honest, I just it needs to change, and we need these board members as much as they are all dyed-in-the-wool Rangers fans, I've no doubt, and have certainly put their money where their mouth is. There needs to be some sort of cohesive structure that Dave King claims to have had and sorted out when he was, picking up the mess from the Easdales, as he said, he's under the impression that that's not there anymore. So if it isn't, and on the outside looking in as fans, it would appear that there isn't, because there's been a lot of mismanagement in our playing staff alone, never mind the fact that we've not sorted out the footballing infrastructure behind the scenes. So there'll come a point, if this keeps going on, people will eventually vote with their feet. Rangers fans are quite fickle. Look at the reduced attendances we've had at Hampden so far.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's from one mistake, a mistake of not having the stadium, ready in time for the start of the season for whatever reason. And that's another one that squarely sat with the board as well. You know what I mean? You've got to build that into your thinking when you're making decisions like that. And I think there's been too many examples of the board making decisions like that seem ill thought out and certainly badly executed.
Very much so. But as Super Sal WATP says, let's get some positivity back. That's 38 minutes of absolute negativity. We're going to get back to the positivity. Alec, 1-0 win against Dundee United. Obviously not a trouncing as far as a scoreline goes, but a 1-0 win, a clean sheet, some positive performances from several of the players, and a different way to win a game. They showed, I believe, against Dundee United.
No, definitely. I think I said it yesterday on the show. I think the biggest positive yesterday was that we didn't pick up any injuries, and I think as a Rangers team right now, that's got to be our biggest positive, that not a single player had to go off injured. Some positives were that, we did actually, we kept the clean sheet. I think that's one of the bigger positives. I thought we played very well for the first maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then we seemed to almost divert to our usual tactic of not playing as well as we did. I do think a big part of that was the fact that they changed formation and went to a back four rather than the back five and tried to come out a bit. But I think Tom Lawrence had an opportunity to get a hat-trick in that game and actually put that game to bed on numerous occasions. I
mean, on Tom Lawrence, Ian, we couldn't have got off to a better start. It was inside a couple of minutes we scored. He got a little bit of a break of the ball when he was going through, but you need that sometimes. An acute finish, a little chip over the goalie. That first 20, 25 minutes, folk were saying we were quick, we were high pressing, we were knocking it around. You know, it was like, oh, this is it.
It was, and just on Tom Lawrence, I mean, I've been he's probably one of his biggest critics so far this season because he disappears for long spells of the game, seems to lack fitness. But we saw Tom Lawrence last a lot longer than he has been previously. You know what I mean? We saw him, running box to box at the end of the game, not just at the beginning of it. You know, his finish was great, and as Alex quite rightly pointed out, he could have had a hat trick, and he did get a wee break of the ball. When he got his goal, and it was, Jim Goodwin will never do that again. He actually started with quite a high line, and then they all literally get caught with that one move. You could literally see the 4 players step out as Tom Lawrence stepped forward into that attacking position, and then thereafter, Jim Goodwin quickly changed it and put a flat back 4 in. And at that point, we went back to what we remember. We struggled to break that down. So it wasn't all sweetness and light. The first 25 minutes, and certainly the first half, we controlled the game. But when the United reverted back to a flat back 4, well, not just that, they literally had, they put everyone behind the ball and had a very a very low press. And to be honest, at that point, we struggled to kind of break them down. And there was a couple of wobbles where United kind of break up the pitch and like, oh God, that could have been it. That could have been it. But luckily, we saw it out, and there was a lot of positives there. And I think you'll maybe go on to mention a few more players, but Tom Lawrence, quite rightly, was man of the match for me but I've not up to that point. I think he's been pretty indifferent so far this season.
Very much so. And I like the Gallant Pioneers mentioning this high press. Clement seems to die off around the 15-20 minute mark. Well, the Celtic game had died off after about 10 minutes, wasn't it? It seems to work for Seoul. I appreciate you can't do this high press for 90 minutes. I totally get that. But it does seem to just drop off, but it never returns. You don't mind doing it for a period in the game and then having a lull and then doing it again because, as I say, you can't do it all the time. But it just is Gallant Pioneer saying here, it does seem to just die off and never return for the rest of the game. Like the second half, we just never did this high press once.
I think we got 15 minutes in the first half, and I think it was maybe the 5 minutes of the second half we got that high press, and then we seemed to just revert back to our way of trying to pass it around. And one point I want to make is what are Rangers doing just now with this passing it around the back? Why are we being so dangerous with just passing it between Jack Butland, and then we're going to Proper over to Suter back, and we're putting ourselves in positions where there was 1 or 2 opportunities in that game for Dundee United to get a goal, where Tav was playing the ball to Butland and he was selling them short, and we're having to just pump it up the pitch. But I do think Clement obviously has a style of football he wants to play, and he says, what was it, October, November time, he's going to see the Rangers he wants to play. Are we going to be getting a 90-minute high press? Is that going to see a lot more rotation with subs coming on a lot quicker? Because you look at Bajrami, he came on, 45 minutes, and he took off Cortez. I think that was more to protect Cortez, but, it does seem after 20 minutes that we revert back to just trying to pass it around and wait for teams to come out. And I think Ian pointed out, Dundee United had no intention of coming out for large periods of that game. They just wanted to stay back and let us have the ball and wait for us to make a mistake and then go on the counter and have Trapanovsky running at Tav because he was on that yellow. And I think that was the issue we've seen a lot, was they waited for us to make mistakes rather than doing it on their own.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, we don't have the players for a 90-minute, press. But, I mean, pressing for 90 minutes is pretty much impossible. You can't do that. It's just, you'll be dead on your feet after about 50, 60 minutes. But, certainly when you lose the ball, I mean, Rangers play with the ball quite a lot. They're quite a dominant team in Scotland.
I just brought up that point from Alan there. He's just said exactly what you've just said there, Ryan. Do you know what I mean? So he's absolutely bob on. You know what I mean? We can't. It's unrealistic to press relentlessly for 90 minutes. But what I would say back to Alan would be that we still didn't kill the game off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's you know what I mean. And if you watch other teams that we'll not mention, they that high press that they've got, you just feel there's going to be 2 or 3 goals, and there invariably is, But we again found ourselves in a position whereby it's just the one goal. It's just the one goal. And then, like I said, you get that wee odd breakaway up the pitch. Albeit, I never really felt, if I were to give an overriding sentiment of that game, I'd say we were comfortable. You know, it was a comfortable 1-0 win for us, I would say. I don't feel
think Dundee United had a shot on target, to be fair.
Yeah, and I don't think they certainly deserved anything, Alex, from the game either. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think they could go away feeling that that they deserved a draw or something, because they certainly didn't. But they could have maybe got one because we didn't kill the game off. Usual.
You're always vulnerable at 1-0, aren't you?
Yeah.
Simple as that. You're always vulnerable, and there was obviously chances, but one guy that sort of got everybody going and off their seats, Alec, was it Inagami?
Igami, yeah. See, to be fair, see when he came on, he looked up for it. Then he just looked like he wanted to be the number one striker. He came on against Celtic. You know, we were already getting done in, and he's come on. He thought, right, this is my chance to impose, and he didn't have. He's strong. He's quick, powerful. He wanted to run with the ball. But he's also smart. He's got that intelligence. A lot of time teams want to attack, and he thought, no, a bit of man management here. I'm going to take it to the corner. And I thought that was quite a smart thing to do. He thought, I'm not going to get a goal, but I'm not going to be sloppy and try and take on a player and let Dundee United get back at the park. I'm going to take it to the corner. But I thought it would have been better to be talking on the show saying he got a wonderful assist, because that pass he played to Lawrence was just unbelievable.
Yeah. And
Iggamani. I can just hear Martin now coming on correcting you. You know.
So Iggamani, Ian. What I liked about him was he ruffled that centre halves quite a lot, and there was a couple of times he flew into attack, and I was like, "Oh no, don't!"
Brilliant. And you know what, Brian? See off the camera, you watch these. You see the body language of the players when they're off the ball, and you saw a couple of defenders giving them a wee dunt and a wee shove because he was getting under their skin. Yeah. You know, he was getting under the skin, so they were trying to unnerve him back. But you know, this guy's got a low centre of gravity. He's got a directness that looks, you know, really, when he's directly running at the goal, he looks like he's going to be quite difficult to knock off the ball, you know. And dare I say it, he might suit a 4-4-2 formation as the small powerful striker, you know. But be interesting to see how they play. I don't know if I would play him up there alone as a lone striker, but we don't know enough about him yet to kind of, you know, get carried away. You know, this whole kind of, I think Martin touched on it in the morning pod or the day before. You know, this is the savior, the second coming. You know what I mean? But no, exactly. You know what I mean? He certainly is impressed. And you know that way when you play football and someone like that comes on and he's taking, you know, balls on his chest down that are coming at him at some pace, you're like, wow, this guy's pretty impressive. Do you know what I mean? He has a presence about him. And I must say, I think it's been reported more than once that he made a huge impact in the training ground. That's been commented a few times by journalists here and there. And the expectation was, you know, kind of quiet, willing for this to work for us, you know. So listen, long may it last. And I love the fact he's playing with he's playing with the aplomb of a young boy playing in the playground. You know what I mean? He's just literally kind of, you know, head down, going for it, not worrying about all the noise that's going on about this Rangers just now. He just looks like someone that just wants to get his chance and take it. You know?
No, definitely.
Absolutely. And now the defensive partnership came under a little bit of scrutiny. I think John Suter had a fairly good game. I think he was pretty solid. Alec, and I think Proper's still, what's the word I'm looking for? He's very pedestrian, very lackadaisical. Yeah. He needs to be more proactive and seeing things happening. And even when he does, he's not quick enough to alert. And I'm just worried. I'm kind of worried now with Proper just not being the player that we all imagined or thought he would be.
He needs to be the proper defender, you know. I think the issue you've got is that he sometimes seems to lack that bit of strength, but, you know, he just seems to get pushed off the ball, or he's not got that awareness that when the ball's coming in, and he's almost relying on Suter to carry it up for him. I think there was a few times the ball came in and he thought there was a foul, and instead of carrying on with the game, he's sitting looking at the referee. It's like, you've got to play to the whistle, and you've got to be aware that your job's not done until either that ball's in the goalie's hands or it's away, And I think hopefully, maybe he's just, as Ian said, he's not acclimatised to our game yet, and it's going to take him a few more games to get in touch. The issue you've got is when you're a Rangers player, sometimes you don't get that amount of time, and there's always another player. I think Leon Balogun might be staring at him saying, I want a chance here. Can I get back in this team and show a name? And we've got, is it Nasiala as well, who's coming in as well? It's like that spot's not fully locked down to suit him proper yet. There's other boys there that are chomping at the bit to get that starting spot.
Yeah, I mean, Ian said it's dynamic is the word, Brian. It probably is, yeah. But it's... Yeah, I mean, Balogun's obviously... I mean, I think everybody would agree that if you had managed to get a hold of a Balogun at 26, 27, that would have been... that would have been ideal, Ian, but obviously we didn't. But Proper just needs to do the simple things quicker rather than dallying and taking his time. There was that period in the Celtic game, I remember, where he was throwing it over at the goalie. The goalie goes giving him back, and then you thought he'd go forward. He came back, went back to the goalie, and he just wasn't sure or lacked a bit of confidence.
Yeah, do you know what? I think I've said before, as much as he was particularly bad against Celtic, he's just at that point he'd kind of just been here a couple of weeks to get caught up against a team that certainly had momentum and we didn't, and he certainly wasn't our worst performer that day, But I don't think anyone really got pass marks, with maybe the exception of Conor Barron that day. But let's not talk about that day. You know what I mean? So it's just. It's enough, yeah. But what I would say is it's been interesting looking at some of the comments. Some of the comments have actually said, I'm seeing one there come through from Linda Ross saying she's not impressed with Proper, but I've seen this Sniper thought he maybe had his best 90 minutes at Tannadice. Yeah. I've got to say, I didn't think he was particularly bad, but what I'll caveat that with, Brian, is I don't think Dundee United did anything in the final third that tested them, So, I don't think there was anyone that was really, I mean, Suter got to do his runs, straight out of defence over the halfway line, largely unhindered, and when he does that, that means your forward players, the opposition, aren't doing their job, shutting them down, closing them down. So I can't say I can remember anyone being particularly bad at the back or at the weekend on Sunday, but I've got to say, Dundee United, I thought with their the recent form and the 2 wins, 2 draws, I thought they would be better. They would be better. But it was a good test for us. 3 points down the road, and that's what matters. That'll give the new team a bit of confidence, and they'll hopefully build on that.
I don't think Proper's a ball playing centre back, and I think that's what could be the issue, because when you look at the players we've had before, they like to take the ball. Like Suter loves taking that ball, as you said, he's up halfway line and then he springs a pass. When the ball comes to Proper, he's looking for either to pass it to Suter, pass it to Butland, or pass it to Hefty and let them run, and then he stays back. And I think that might be what we're not used to. We're used to our defenders taking the ball and then springing a pass into midfield. And I think maybe he just wants to, when the ball comes to him, get it away as quickly as possible.
Very, very much so. This one popped up, Ian. It's the Sniper. He'd have Barron and Razkin as a pairing, and maybe that would sort that issue with Barami. Barami, is it? Barami. Another one that I'm sounding like Alan Brazil here with the foreign surnames. I just can't get it. But Razkin certainly looked fairly obviously energetic and putting himself about in that midfield, and I've always said if he kept himself fit, he would be a player for us.
Well, I hope so, Brian. I'm not as convinced as you are. I think he's been here a long time, and what we have seen's been at best all right. To me, what I will say is it certainly sorts out we had a Mo Diomande problem at the weekend. You know what I mean? On Sunday, and essentially what happened there is, it was interesting. You saw him running in at the back post for I can't remember who the cross came over from, but he was playing at a number 9 at one point, and then he naturally drifts forward, which has caused problems for Barron. So I can understand when Raskin then comes in, as you just say, it looks a bit more structured, because I'm not quite sure that the message is getting through from Clement about the distance between Barron and Diamandi. I don't know how that's meant to work. So Barron's getting left exposed an awful lot because Diamandi's kind of drifting forward. I think he is naturally better drifting forward as a player, but we need to understand that whole shape in front of the defence, because against better teams, Barron and the centre back pairing would have been exposed, because I think the Mo Diamandis of the world kind of lose concentration and kind of drift out of position quite easily. And I think that's when at least when Raskin came on, he very much knew where he was playing and he stuck to his position. And I think that's the improvement we saw, rather than Raskin, pulling up trees.
Would it be fair to say, Alec, that this team are still finding their feet, as in a sense of a cohesive unit? There's been a lot of upturn, there's been a lot of outs, there's been several ins, there's guys that have been out long term that are coming back. Is it just, are we going to have to wait and hopefully we don't get any more serious injuries, and once all the people that are on the injury list come back, that the manager can then now turn around and say, right, I can pick my best 11 that I actually want, and we can find a little bit of consistency on the pitch and operate as a cohesive unit?
No, definitely. I think we are still waiting for a few players to come back, but I think to further Ian's point, I do think Mo Diamandi wants to be that number 10. He does. I think he's attracted to the ball. He just wants to run after the ball. It doesn't matter what his position is. He wants to be all over the park, and I do think it leaves Barron a bit on his own at times. But I do think, once we get some of the boys back, I do think you'll see Clement start playing a more consistent 11. I don't think the plan was to play Kieran Dibble yesterday, but with Czerny being ill, he had to throw him in, and I think I don't think Dibble had a particularly bad game, but I think you could only see that he could only manage the 45 minutes. Now, I do think you need to wait until we can get some of the boys back. As the manager said, October, November, you might see the full team that he wants to play, but do we really have time for that when we've got the Cup on Saturday? We're going into Europe, we're getting into the tougher games. Do we actually have time to wait for, this is the team I want to play, but they'll catch up? Do you know? We're 5 points behind Aberdeen and Celtic. Have we got time to just sit and wait and coast out 1-0 victories?
This is going to be the problem. Yeah, absolutely. One last point, Ian, from Andrew Lammer, own member. Now beginning to wonder if Sterling is being phased out by Clement. He has players fit. There's been a lot of talk about Sterling now looking lost on the pitch, not doing what he should be doing, and things like that. Because obviously when Sterling came in, he was. The fans were clamoring for him to play because he was, he was the only one that was looking like, he could put himself about. Is Sterling becoming another player in the sort of?
Well, I think we've created this problem with Sterling ourselves. I think we've genuinely played him in almost every position known to man outside of the goalkeeper, and we've now got a player that is now struggling to understand where he actually does fit into this team and what role should he be committed to. My impression would be that his natural position would be as a sitting midfielder alongside Connor Barn, and keep close to Connor in terms of what Raskin did when he came on against Dundee United. But it would appear that there's still meetings of him going at right back, covering Tav, and then when he does come on, he looks a bit disjointed. You're right, he's not been particularly great recently, but I think we've created that problem, to be honest, because we know there's ability there. I think a lot of us last year would say he was certainly one of our best players last year, So he doesn't become a bad player overnight. I just think we've created the problem with using him as a utility player all over the pitch to the point where we now don't know where to play him and he can't settle in one particular role.
The phrase that comes to mind, Alec, is jack of all trades, master of none.
Definitely. I think Ian nailed it on the head there. We've asked him to play left back, right back, centre mid, left wing, right wing. It's like, if that's my head, I'm going, well, where am I playing? What is my purpose in this club? Surely, I know that you want players to be able to play in multiple positions, but not everywhere on the park. Surely you get to a point where you've got to say, right, I want you on either the right-hand side or in the holding midfielder role, and that's where you're going to play. Because then you bring in more players and other players who then perhaps do the job better because they've had a good game. And Sterling's coming on for the last 10, 15 minutes. And if he's had a bad game, it's like, right, you're not coming on next game. We'll try something else, or we're not trying that position. And I do think he's got to find his position quickly. And when I say he, I mean Clement's got to find Sterling's position quite quickly and say, right, this is where you're going to play. You're going to play, is it beside Barron? Are you going to come on as a sub for Tav, Czerny? Who is it? And where does he go? And that's what it is, because it doesn't look like he's going to get a start anytime soon. Is he going to start in the cup? Are we going to rest players and that's when he's going to start and we actually get a good look? Or is he just going to be another rotational player?
Do you think Brian has now become only a rotational player? Do you think that's now what he can just be now?
Sterling,
as a utility guy.
Sterling's he's going down that road, I believe.
Yeah.
He's as you say, the two of you have mentioned, he's been shifted from pillar to post. He's not played in a consistent position for any length of time.
Ever.
And I've said it all along. You need to, for players to start functioning and working as a team, you need to be consistently playing in a certain position, be that right back, left back, whatever position. You need to be playing you need the defense to be the same. You need to be the midfield. You need to work on things, and changing it all the time just doesn't work. And I just feel that he's been, as you say, shifted from midfield to right back to forward to winger. It can't be good for a player that he doesn't know which week he's going to be a midfielder or a striker, or it's fair enough doing it for one-off game, but doing it all the time is no use.
Well, look at training alone at Auchenhowie, Brian. So the defenders break off and do their thing. Yeah, the strikers break off. Where does Sterling go? Does he take a wee shot at all of them? Do you know what I mean?
He gets a timetable to join in every set.
Just like that. Hold on, guys. I've done my 5 minutes here. I'm going up to do cross balls and all that kind of stuff. But it's just. Yeah, I feel for Sterling. I think we've created that problem a little bit. But as someone else has pointed out, good players come through in the end. So if he is good enough, he'll get in the team.
Sterling's role almost seems to just be covering for whoever's tired the most. Whoever's tired, bring them off and bring on Sterling. And it's a shame because he's a good player and you can see he's good. As that comment from Rangers on tour said, he's a right back and he does excel at right back, and yet he's only played at right back a handful of times at this club. That's probably the least played position we played him in, is right back.
And please don't ask me to pronounce the new right back that we got from Holland. I'm not even going there.
Casemiro, is it?
No, I'm not. I've butchered enough names tonight.
Alex will know it. Alex will know it. He's got everybody's name, even and every team in the SPFL. I was listening to it yesterday. So come on, Alex, how do you pronounce it? You'll know.
Casemiro.
That's a weirdo. There we go.
Right,
we'll get the breakdown in a minute. Somebody will pop up the comments.
Must be an age thing, Brian.
I know. As I said earlier, I'm starting to feel like Alan Brazil and his pronunciations of foreign players. So I'll stay well clear of that one. But that is it tonight, folks. That was the Monday night pod. Sorry, apologies again for the phone in. I think Martin's internet was playing up again, so the phone in couldn't happen. We're back on Wednesday with a members pod at 7:30. We've got our Friday YouTube at 7:30 on Friday night. And then we've got the Dundee reaction on Saturday and a random Rabble on Sunday. So that is the programme for the week, folks. Get it in your diaries. And my thanks to Ian and Alex. Thank you, Ian.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Alex, nice having you on.
Thanks again.
And as I say, like, share and subscribe. Get anybody. It's a simple a thumbs up on the. Brian was drinking. Yeah, I was drinking. Yeah, I probably was actually. Yeah. And then the only difference was I didn't get posted missing, so I was all right. But yeah, absolutely. Cheers, Alan. But no, we shall see you on Wednesday night with the member show. And thank you for joining us.